Hello, this is Brian Lyles, and I've been wondering for a while if there's actually a feasible way to test drive Android application development. As a TDDer, I find it hard to write code without a corresponding test that already exists. So let's see, can we do it? I think we can. And so let's quit IntelliJ and relaunch it. Dun, dun. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new project. And we're going to create a project called SnapPic. And what SnapPic will do is actually just snap a picture, allow you to preview it, and then it'll show you the preview. So you'll notice here that I'm using IntelliJ. I actually prefer it to Eclipse. So I'm just using it for this demo. All this stuff at a high level will carry over to Eclipse and probably be easier in some cases. So we'll have a main activity for our project, and we'll create our new project. And since we are test driving our project, what we're going to want to do here is add a new module, and we're going to call it SnapPic Test, and it'll be an Android module, and it'll be testing our SnapPic. Alrighty here. So now, yes. So now what we have here are SnapPic and our SnapPic module, our SnapPic test module. So the first place we always will start is by launching up our test, and I'll clear out this to make it easier to read. From a high level, it's really hard to test drive Android applications using what's built into the Android SDK. So what I will suggest is Robotium, and that's what we'll use actually to do some of our magic here. So before we start with this, what I'll need to do is add that dependency to our test project here, and we're just going to add a new library, and it's going to be called Robotium, and we'll just attach classes, and they are here. I already have it in a directory. There you go. Alrighty. So the first thing we want to do is actually set up our setup method. And all we need to do is create a method called setup. And inside of our setup, I don't want the super piece. Actually, we'll keep the super piece. And we'll define a new solo instance. And this solo is actually what drives Robotium. So we need to use get. It takes two arguments. The constructor does. It wants the instrumentation, and it also wants the activity that's under test. And because we are going to use this, get this and go solo, we're going to convert this to a field attribute. Okay. And what we'll probably also want is a teardown method as well. And in our teardown, all we're going to want to do really is finalize our solo. So do solo finalize, and that needs to try catch, and looks good. So now we're ready to actually start writing some tests. So we'll go public test snaps a pic. So what I'm trying to do here is actually just define what my application is doing through tests rather than saying I need to implement piece A, piece B, piece C. I'm just going to say this is what the application does. So what does the application do? Well, what we want it to do is we want to be able to go into the app, and we want to click on a button, and that button is going to be called snap. And after we snap, we're going to go into our camera, and we're going to actually be able to save the picture. And then we're going to get thrown back to our SnapPic app, and we want to be able to click on a button called save. And then after we save, we want to, let's see, we want to actually verify the picture is there. So what we'll do is we'll look inside of the view, and we'll call that preview. We'll look inside of a view for something called preview, and we'll just assert that picture should be visible, and we'll check that by saying the visibility for the view picture get visibility will be visible. So this is our test. This is all we're going to do. 4 lines. And the first thing you always want to do is run your test and watch them fail. That's the most important piece of test-driven development. So now we'll notice here that it can't find a view called, preview. So what we'll have to do here is let's go ahead and just define that view right now. We'll just define the final view and see what it looks like. So we'll go back up into the resources for our main app, and we'll create something. We'll create a view called preview.xml, or just call it preview. And inside of there, we'll just say image view here, and we'll just say that it fills the parent at both dimensions. So layout width equals fill parent. Fill parent, Android layout weight, fill parent, and we'll give it an ID so we can reference it in the text in our test. Okay, see if we missed anything. And this is not weight, it's height. Okay. So one of my mantras of test-driven development is change the method, or change the message, or make the test pass. Right now we're changing messages because there's no way we can have the test pass because there's no code. So what we're doing here is we're going to cast it. So what we've done now is we changed the message by actually giving it knowledge of the preview. So now when we run the test, and I will show you what this looks like when the test runs. Alright, there we go, a lolcat. The tests are running, and what they're going to do is launch our application in the emulator, and nothing happens. And the error here is button with text snap is not found. So going back to our change the message or make it pass, we really need to move it forward by changing the message. So how can we do this? Well, the first thing we can do here is go back to our project and look inside of our main activity. And what we're going to have to do here is create a view that actually has a button called snap. Thinking ahead a little bit, I'm just going to use fragments for this, so we only have to have one activity. So let me go ahead and configure that right now. So I'm going back into my project, and I'm just going to change dependencies, and I'm going to add a dependency, a library, and we're going to make a new library, and we're going to call it, let's see what we're going to call it. Let's go use our local seller, Android, SDK, get in here, in there, and what I'm going to do is get the support extras, so I can actually do fragments in a lower version. So we're going to use Android support v13. There we go. And we're going to call this one Android support-v13. So now my application can use fragments. So because we're using fragments, this is no longer a fragment. No longer a regular activity, it's a fragment activity. So we'll make that change. So what do we need to do now? Well, the first thing we want to do is put up a view on the screen that actually has that button on there. And inside of a fragment, this is actually pretty easy. So let's actually create the layout, and we're going to call this layout fragment. Let's call it fragment main. Now let's call it fragment snap. Inside of fragment snap, we're just going to create a button called, and we're going to with, and we're going to go, oops, missed it, layout with, and we're going to make that wrap content, and we're going to make the weight or the height on this bad boy wrap content, and we're going to give it an ID so we can reference it later. So Android ID equals ID, we're going to call it button snap. There we go. So now what we want to do is we'll need an actual fragment. So let's go ahead and create a fragment. So if we go down to, I'll keep this one open, close this one, go down to our source folder for our main application here, we're going to create a new Java and we're going to call it snap fragment. And since it's a fragment, we're going to extend, it's just a regular old fragment. And what we needed to do now is actually show that view. So how do we do that? Well, what we can do here is we'll just override on create view, and we'll just do return inflator dot inflate r dot layout dot fragment snap, and it's in that container, and we don't want it attached to there. Okay. So now we go back to our main activity, and then we can now have something to show. So what we want to do here is actually show that fragment on our page. But one more thing before we do that. We need to get rid of this text view, because we're no longer going to have a text view. And we're going to make another linear layout. And we're going to, in the Android, what we're going to do in that linear layout is create a place, like a little playground or a frame, for us to put all the rest of our fragments. So layout weight equals my height equals fill parent, layout width equals fill parent, Android ID equals, and what we'll call this one is, we'll just call it mainframe. So now we have a place to actually put all of our fragments. So inside of here, inside of our main activity, what we'll want to do now is actually instantiate our main fragment. So we'll call that one snap fragment equals new snap fragment, and then we'll say fragment manager, put this fragment inside of our frame, and we're just going to replace r.id.mainframe with our fragment and tell it to commit. So, and then we'll reorganize all this code, and what we'll see now, if we run our test, snap-pick test, what we have here is when it launches, we're actually going to see our little snap button. Okay, there we go. Wait for it to launch. Oops. Oh, we have an error. So we can't run this, and the reason we can't run this is because inside of our dependencies, we didn't export our Android extras. And that's what happened there. So there we go. Now it's actually going to run. So now it's running, and Robotium is trying to launch our application, and now there's a button here, but the error is button with text snap is not found. Okay, well, this is easy enough to fix. We can go back to our layout for that fragment, and we just add a text for that button, and now that button will actually have text. So we'll watch it again, watch it run. One thing you'll notice is that doing testing like this, smoke type testing, is a lot slower than regular old unit tests. So that's something to keep in mind, that your smoke test will be slower. So it pressed the button, but what's going to say now is that it's going to complain that it couldn't find the button with text saved. So what we need to do now is actually wire up the save button to, or the snap button to actually call our camera. So how do we do that? And since we're at a high level testing, we don't really care exactly how it works. All we do care is that it works well enough to make our test pass. We can actually go through with another round of testing to actually test the implementation of how we're actually going to do this. So one easy way to make this actually work is inside of our snap fragment, what we can do is create a listener for that button. And it'll be an on-click listener, and we'll just call it snap listener. And there it goes. And inside of there, what we'll want to do is create an intent. And the intent that we're going to create is a media store action action image capture intent. And because we're using that particular intent, well, actually, let me see what we mess up here. Oops. There we go. And what we'll need to do is say start activity for result, and we'll need to say that intent, and we'll give that result ID 0, but that's bad form. So what we can do is no, is actually go up into our, well, we'll just do it the easy way. We'll just say that public final static int snap picture that equals 0, and we'll just put a snap picture. So now what will happen when we run this intent, or actually got one more thing to do. We need to wire up the listener to the actual button. So we'll put that in on activity created. And what we'll do is we'll say button snap button equals get activity find view by d r.e button steps. And we'll make sure the cache on that is correct. And then we'll say snap button set on click listener to our snap listener. And now what will happen is whenever we click this button, it'll actually go to the camera app. And we have an error here, so let's figure out what our error is. Oops, yeah, semicolon. So let's run our test again and see what happens. So now, as we run our test, and it's going to launch our activity, and we're going to hit the snap button. But look what happened when we go there. It's going to actually ask us to use our camera. But I also have something here called a fake camera. And what this fake camera does is allows us to do high-level smoke testing without actually having any inputs. Because unfortunately, due to Android security, you can't actually control another activity. So what I have here is a fake camera that actually will just snap a random picture, or it'll return a random picture, but it'll act just like the built-in camera. So let's see how that works. So for the rest of our demo, we'll just use fake camera. And there we go. So when we run this again, it'll actually, let's see if see, it's snapping the picture. Oh, actually, here's something else interesting that we run into. For Robotium to be able to actually control the interface, what we need to do is actually set the minimum version of Android. So it uses a couple things we need to do here. So it uses SDK, Android target version, and we'll just say that this one will be 9 for Android 2.3. And something else that I also forgot is uses permission. We're going to say that we're using the camera. And Actually, we technically, I don't know if we really need this one, but I'm adding it anyways. Um, so let me run this test again. So inside of our, so in our log, we can actually see that the test is starting. It snapped the picture, but nothing happened. And what happens is the fake camera says, I'm unable to snap a photo because I'm missing my intent extras. And what it's missing is actual place to store that photo. I don't know if my mock of the camera is 100% actual factual, but I did put a dependency on it to make sure that it actually does need a place to save the image. So let's go ahead and tell it where it's going to save that image. So going back to our snap fragment, what we need to do is add some extras onto our intent, and we need to create a file some way, somehow. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the uh, we're going to get the URI from this file, and then what we're going to do is go intent dot put extra and media store that extra output, and we're just going to put that URI there. So what we need to do now is figure out where in the world we're going to get this camera image from. So because I don't know at this time how I'm actually going to use this, what I'm going to do is just create a helper class, and we'll just call it photo helper. And inside of our photo helper, I'll just create a static method, and we'll just call it the temp photo file. And oops, it's not interface. And then we'll turn a new file, and we'll say environment dot get external storage directory, and we'll just call it snap pic .jpg, and that's where our photo will live. So back in here, um, so back in our actual when we need to allocate this file or get this file, what we'll do is we'll just say file equals photo helper. There we go. Now everybody's happy. So when we run this test again, and you'll notice that if you're doing TDD, you run your test an awful lot because your tests and their output actually say where you need to code next or what you need to do next. So if you notice in my snap, my fake camera said click, and it returned an image. But what happens? So now in Android, if you're going to start an activity for a result, the next thing you're going to need is to get the result of that activity. So what we need to do here is create a handler called onActivityResult. And inside of that handler, what we'll need to do is look at our request code and our result codes. So if request code equals snap picture, because we can actually have multiple ones in a real app, and result code equals the result was okay. Let's do some stuff. And what we're going to do is pass it on so we can start our preview. So the first thing now, what we'll need is, so we're going to make a fragment called confirm fragment. And that fragment will actually confirm our picture that we just took. And then we'll say, we'll get this active. Then what we'll do is we'll change our frame, our main frame that we created before, to actually contain this new confirm fragment. So we're going to replace the id.mainFrame with our fragment, and then we'll commit that. So back to change the message or make it pass. What we're going to do now is actually create this confirm fragment. So create this class confirm fragment, and we'll put it in our source directory. And what this thing will do will be an extends fragment, because once again, it's a fragment. and that actually clears up this message. So now we have this confirm fragment. So what are we going to put inside of our confirm fragment? Well, our confirm fragment actually needs our save button. So let's run our test again just to make sure that we're on the right track. So what we'll know from this test run is that we haven't really introduced any new errors. We just haven't introduced any new functionality. So now what we're waiting for is this confirm fragment to actually say save. So this test is going to fail because it's looking for a button with a text, save is not found. So let's go ahead and create that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a layout. And the layout will be called fragment, let's call it fragment confirm. And inside of there, what we'll do is we'll put a button. And once again, we'll just say Android layout width equals wrap the content inside of the button. And the layout height will wrap the content inside the button. We'll give it an ID of, let's see, ID, we'll just call it button save. And we'll need to give it some text as well. ID or text, and we'll just call this save. So now what we'll need to do is we'll have to have this fragment right here actually display it. So to do that, once again, we'll just need to on create view, and we'll need to have this on create view return that layout we just created. So inflator, inflate the r dot layout dot fragment confirm, and we'll put it in this container, and we won't attach it to the root. So now, if we run our test again, so you'll see that the progression here is always write a test, make some changes, change the message, or make it pass. So what we've done now is we've snapped the picture, we have click, and now we have a null pointer exception. So let's figure out why we have a null pointer exception. I know exactly why. We have a null pointer exception because it clicked on the button save, and then it went to try to find the preview. So the issue is on our confirm fragment, there is no preview image view, or there's no image view called preview. So what we want to do inside of our test, and you always have to refactor your test too. So what we'll do here is we'll code for this, and we'll say if picture is equal to null. No, actually, we do it backwards. If picture is not equal to null, we will do that assertion. If not, we'll fail. Expecting a preview. So let's run this again. So now, back in our test, and as you see, we always will be running tests, always running tests, because we always have to verify what we're doing is working. So you notice now, inside of our test error message, expecting a preview. So now that we're not getting a logic error, we're actually telling ourselves that we're expecting something that isn't there. So let's move on to making that happen. So after when we click the save button, what we'll need to do now is launch the preview. So we'll need a little bit of code to attach to that save button so we can go to the next view. So let's write that listener. So we'll call this listener click listener. We'll just call it the save listener. And we'll create a new instance of our on click listener. And inside of there, what we'll do is we'll need to, we're going to have another fragment. This is our third fragment now, called preview fragment. And inside of our preview fragment, we're just going to, basically all we're going to do is just keep on moving forward, and we're just going to, once you click the save button, we're going to move you on to the next version of it, or the next fragment. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because our tests only say that we need to see this. They don't say how it gets there. We'll leave it to the lower level testing to actually say how it gets there. So now what we have here is basically instantiate our preview fragment and then tell the fragment manager to place it into mainframe. The issue, like we had before, is there's no thing here called preview fragment. So let's go ahead and create that. And our preview fragment extends a fragment. So what this will now do is allow our confirmed fragment to work properly. So inside, oh, another thing we'll need to do here, back our confirmed fragment, is we'll need to actually wire up that button. So we'll do it on activity created. So we'll say button, save button equals get activity dot find view by id r.id dot button dot save, and then we'll say save button dot on click listener. No, it's set on click listener to our save listener. And we'll need to make sure that this cast is correct. So now what will happen here, and we can run. Let's figure out where our error is. Oh, got a semicolon again. So if we run our test again, what will happen is we will actually launch. We will snap the picture. We'll ask if we will snap the picture. We'll snap the picture. We'll save the picture, and nothing will happen because what we are waiting for is expecting a preview. So we're now on to this last piece of actually showing the preview. So the good thing is we've already written the expectation. We already have the preview layout. So all we need to do in our preview fragment is show it. So one thing we'll have to do here is actually show the view. So on create view, and we'll return an inflator that inflates our r.layout preview. And we'll put it in a container, and we won't attach it to the root. And also what we'll need to do is say, now that we have our layout, we'll actually need to say, hey, take that picture that we took earlier and actually show that picture. So get from file, and we'll use our photo helper again. This is one of the reasons we created it. So notice this is not saved. We just basically put our picture in a file, and now we're just getting it from the file again. In a more robust implementation, you'd probably get it from somewhere else, or have a lot more logic around that. But that's not important from a high-level view. From the user's point of view, we just have a picture that we want to show. So what we'll do now is get that image view from our layout, and id.preview, and we'll need to put a cast on that, and we'll just say preview.set image URI to URI. There we go. And let's run through our test again. So you notice, once again, running our test, always running our test. So it snaps a picture, our picture's been saved, we saved it, and now we have our picture image. So you'll notice that our test passes now, and we didn't have to worry about what code we need to write next. Our editor or our log messages always showed us what code needed to be written next. So from a high-level point of view, yes, it is possible to test drive Android apps. So I just wanted to show this to people. I know this was a little bit long, but just wanted to show this because I think people are really looking forward to these things. So thanks for watching.